everyone, welcome back. Today we're gonna put some tips and tricks on how we found an apartment and kind of like what we looked for and how we did it during a pandemic. So right now we've recently a month now.
It's been like 3 months, 2 months.
Whoa,
3 months,
no,
yeah.
3 months since we moved into our new apartment. And here's some things that like we had to keep in mind when we were searching, because I think this was your first time searching for an apartment, right? And it was my second time, but I was around a college area, so it was like a little bit easier. So I think I wanted to ask you first, like when we were looking and we were trying to find an apartment, what was the biggest thing that you had in mind?
So I think the biggest thing for me is location, right? Location for any house or any place you want to live in is really important, right? Because you have to see, like, if you work, you have to see where you work. If you go to school, you have to see where you go to school. And the third one is how convenient is everything. That was like, these are my top three, right? Because convenience is like if you need to go to a grocery store, or if you need to go to the gas station, it's just like essential stuff. I want that to be accessible, but you don't have to drive 40 minutes. No, not really 40 minutes, but like you don't have to drive a long time to get somewhere. And then the two main ones is where do you go to school and where do you work? Or where do you work, right? If you want to commute, then you could choose the limit of how far everything is. So if you okay with commuting 1 hour, then you could expand your search to 30 miles away from you, or 20 miles, right? But if you don't want to commute, then you would have to choose around that location. Like for example, we are going to school, right? We are in college, so one of the ideas was, do I want to live next to my school or do I want to commute? In the end, my thought was living next to a school is always more expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because the people renting it out want money, and they know that students need to live near, right? Some people don't have the ability to commute, or they don't want to, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to limit, I don't want to spend a lot on an apartment near my school, but I also don't want to commute an hour, right? So I chose to live somewhere in between that, right? So I only have to drive 30 minutes to my school, but that's still not as long as living farther, and we're still paying a decent amount.
Yeah.
And as for work, since I don't have, a typical job, right? Since everything is online, I didn't really have to take that into account, but it would be the same as finding it if you're going to school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think you brought up a good point of like location, and I think for me actually my biggest point was price range. Yeah, so I think like for anyone looking for an apartment, it's kind of like a combination of that. Like how much are you willing to pay for convenience? Because likely most of the time, wherever your jobs are going to be is within a city normally, right? And that's usually a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
So when I was in La Jolla for UCSD, it's like everywhere near there is going to be expensive. Like that's just how much the rent is going to be, right? Because it's like apartment complexes near the area, like you want to be near bus stops, right? So for me at that point, I didn't really have a choice.
Yeah.
Right? For whether or not to be like farther, because I don't have a car at that point, right? So it's like I would pay to be closer or be near a stop closer or stuff. At least be somewhere near where the transportation is, right?
Yeah.
But when I moved out, like when I came here, and this is all due to the pandemic, sorry, I focused more on like price range. Like what was cheaper? Because to me, it's like, especially in like LA, like no matter where you go, you're going to commute.
Yeah.
Right? And so for me, that's why I was like, okay, what's cheaper? Like what can I actually pay for the amount that I'm getting, right? So I think that's why the number one top pick will always be a mix between price and location.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, you want to commute longer? Maybe it's a little cheaper, but also takes a lot more time, right?
Yeah.
or unless you pay to be a little closer, and hopefully being closer is still not as expensive. I think that's just always the hope. But say that it isn't, I think it's always good to see what you value more and see what your wallet can afford, right? So that for us was like the number one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do agree, right? On top of location, probably like the second most important thing that I think is, pricing, right? Yeah. For anything that you do, having a budget and having an idea of how much you want to spend is important.
Yeah.
Right. You also agree, you also talked about it just now. It's because if you don't have a budget in mind, you risk the chance of being, I want to say homeless, right? But either losing a lot of money or working many, many hours extra every week just so you could pay for rent.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's stressful. Like, it's like when you have to be living from like any point in that is stressful, and that might happen, but we never want to overexceed what we earn.
Definitely not. So that also, for like budgeting, right, it would also come down to where do you want to live, right? Yeah, that's important, but also what can you afford to, right? Yeah. I think we were lucky enough because we had saved up, we have, taken the time out to budget everything and save for an apartment. We were able to get a place that was a little bit nicer than other stuff that we looked at.
Yeah.
Right? And that might not be the case for everyone, but the idea is still there, right? Saving and budgeting. Right? Setting a limit to how much you want to spend per month on rent and how much you're capable of spending. And I think to go above and beyond that is to save for a couple months of rent.
Yeah,
right?
If possible. I know that saving is honestly a privilege with where we're at, like, to be able to be working jobs that, like, fulfill, like, our needs and a little bit more. I think that is very helpful. So if possible, I think it's, like, slowly understanding finances more.
Yeah.
So I think that's, like, we'll talk about that in detail also. It's, like, how do you save, budgeting, all of that stuff. But in terms of, like, apartment, very, very important to keep in mind the price range that is within, hopefully, right, within your budget. Because I know housing is very, very expensive.
It is. Yeah. And I do agree, right? That what I said wasn't probably not phrased correctly. My point is just having the backup, right? Yeah. Being able to, okay, let's, for example, rent a $1,200 apartment.
Yeah.
Right? In my mind, I would want to have at least, $7,000 or $8,000 on the side, so I could support. So I won't be, down in the dumps. Yeah. If anything happens, and 6 months honestly is a lot, right? And it does take a long time, especially if you're not in the position that we are in. And we are very lucky to be in the position we are in. But maybe having, not 6 months, but maybe 2 months of rent on hand. So like $2,000-$3,000 just already. So if you do a 1-year lease and you could pay it every single month, but the last 2 months you couldn't, but you have the money saved up, then it wouldn't be that bad.
Exactly.
Right. That's the point I'm trying to make. It's just having a backup, having a way out in case of anything.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think that's so location and budgeting, saving is the top two that I think about when searching for an apartment.
Yeah, exactly. And then after that, I would say that actually going and looking at the apartment is also important. I think that this is the part where I think maybe if you can describe kind of like what it was like to look at apartments safely during a pandemic. How was that like? And how did that help you? And what tips would you have for people? Yeah,
so I think after you think about the two main things, it would be, okay, time for an apartment search. Because you have all your criteria. You have all your, basically, what you want, right? Yes. So everything right now is online, is accessible online, like apartments.com, Zillow, rents.com. It's like all of these websites provide a lot of or not provide, but they give you all the listings of different apartments. So when you go in, you would first type in your location, your zip code, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then you could sort it through bedrooms, sort it through pricing. You could put like a price limit on how much you want to spend, right? Since you already have that in your mind, right? That's good. And then how many bedrooms do you want? Like if you're living by yourself, 1 bedroom. If you're living 2 people, maybe you could share 1 bedroom, right?
Depending on the price and stuff.
Yeah. And then maybe you get lucky and you get a 2-bedroom apartment for very, very cheap, right? So when these websites are very good to see what's around you and it has so many filters that it could help you narrow down your search. Definitely. I think that's like probably the best way of doing it. And like you said, we are in a pandemic right now, even though this could range to after pandemic, right? If you're trying to find an apartment. So in the pandemic, we actually did quite a lot of things to actually stay safe and look at apartments.
Yeah, we did.
Right. So I think you remember it's every listing for apartments have pictures.
Yes.
They have
pictures, and now they've had like virtual tours now.
Yeah.
So I think it's like really make sure that like when you can look at it online, like look at it first and see like we were looking at the pictures and some of them were like the date on them was like 2010 or something, and we were like that's a little suspicious. And I think it's like being aware of those details and then really utilizing the pictures, and if they have virtual tours to see that. Also for floor plans. Well, floor plans.
Yes, floor plans if they have it.
Yeah, exactly. So seeing all the details that you have online, and then obviously it's like reading all the details of like when it's been like posted and stuff like that. Yeah. Carpets, like the rules that they have. Like make sure that all those details are set before you go and see it in person.
Yeah. So I forgot to mention that is a lot of times they will put extra information underneath the description of the apartment. If it's not provided, you could email them, send them a message, call them, whatever, because on top of rent, right, you still have utilities, and utilities could add up depending on what you do. A lot of times the apartments would list, what you pay for utilities. Yeah. Is there a fee for certain things? What are you paying for in the rent? Stuff like that. Yeah. Right? Some places, they cover water, they cover electricity, they cover trash, whatever. And you would cover whatever they don't cover. Right? I think this is also very important to know because it could add up. And it could go over your budget if you forget that is also something you have to pay for. Yeah. And maybe, parking. That was a big thing. I think, yeah. So I want to touch up on that a little bit because when my sister and I wanted to move out, we both drive, right? We both have to commute to different places. Like if school opens, I would have to commute to school. So we had to find a place where we could park 2 cars. If it's street parking, you never know. If it's a busy street, it might not be easy to find parking. You might have to park 5 minutes down or something. Yeah. But you might have some places that guarantee 1 spot. And if you're sharing with one other person and you have a 1-bedroom apartment, well, you could, alternate parking spots, or whoever goes out more often could get whatever. So those are a couple things to keep in mind too.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's like a big thing too, because like for me, it's like I'm pretty small, and then sometimes, like, especially when I was at school, I'd come home really late. So for me, it's like, how do I stay safe? Like, what apartments do I have where I can like park in a safe area and safely walk to my house, right? Yeah. So I think that's a lot of things to like keep in mind, right? And also like the other thing that you talk about too is like, what if there isn't street parking? What if it's so hard to find? Like that's something we for sure, like when we saw like 2 parking spaces available, we're like, oh wow. And it was like a price range. It's like, what is important to you in this apartment search, right?
Yeah. So now that we figured out our price, the location, and details of everything, you have 4 or 5 apartments you want to check out. What do you look for when you visit the apartment?
How do you do it safely during a pandemic?
How to do it safely, and what do you look for when you go inside? What should you check for? What should you do? what was the first thing you did?
Yeah,
how was our process?
Yeah, I think for us, it was always like calling first and seeing if they had a virtual tour where they called and they can FaceTime. Because a lot of apartments now offer that. And I think it's like so important to be like, don't risk anything. To like not be safe, especially during a pandemic. Like just stay safe and then see what they offer. So a lot of the things that we had, like once we found out that we didn't really like it, and then we called them and stuff, we didn't really go.
Yeah.
We only went to the places that, like, we were like, okay, these are, like, our top choices.
Yeah.
And then after that, if those didn't work, then we would, like, move to another place, right? So we actually visited two places in person.
Yeah.
But we did so to make sure, after we made sure that they were really safe in how they gave us the keys and stuff. So I think the one way that we checked was that we asked them, like, to see like what their rules were. Yeah. And it's always good to be like, if it's an appointment based, right? So you're not going with multiple people. Hopefully by that point, like no one is allowing that, like to go with multiple people or check things at different times. So we would get the appointment, and what we did was we got the keys and we met them outside, open area. We exchanged the keys. And they, for a credit card, obviously.
Yeah,
so
just for security.
Come back for it.
Yeah, so security.
Yeah, so then, imagine, just take the keys and leave.
And they start buying, like, these people didn't come back, let's buy McDonald's.
Charge them for, like, a whole month's of rent. So, after that, like, we went on our own. Like, as one household to see it. Like, no one else was going to be looking at those rooms. Yeah. So, I think that's what happened for us. So, how you see the rooms is very important. Like, stay safe during this time. Yeah. Right? So... after that was pretty much it. Yeah. For, like, grabbing the keys, you pick it up, you find a time where, like, you're available to go, and unfortunately, normally, it's obviously during, like, weekdays. I think that's when we went.
Oh, I think they still have it open on weekends.
Weekends too? Oh,
yeah,
perfect.
I'm pretty sure.
So I think that's another thing. Like, find a space in your schedule, make sure you have plenty of time. Because I remember when we went, it was like right before work. So I was like, okay, I have until this time to do it. Yeah. And I was like, okay, like, what if we don't have time? And it's like, okay, don't rush that process. Like,
yeah, it's not worth it.
Be there, stay in, check how the apartment actually looks. Yeah. Like, try not to schedule stuff like too much, so that you actually have the time to like look at the apartment properly. Yeah. So those are the tips and tricks. Make sure you give yourself plenty of time to walk around. Like, schedule that time out for yourself. Yeah. Okay. So now you're inside the apartment. Yeah. And you're able to go, and obviously be safe. You're able to go in there, unlock the door, you're walking around. What did you look for?
So, honestly, I think you were more, how do you say it? More
I know it's saying in Mandarin.
Right? Yeah. Like, I was kind of just, oh, this is cool, right? Like, basically, what I look for in an apartment is the amount of space, the amount of sunlight, and basically just the entire feeling of the apartment, right? That's not, you should also check damages, stuff like that, but that's what I'm saying. I wasn't as detail-oriented because I was just, oh, okay, so how big is the living room? Oh, it's this big? Okay, cool. Okay, how big is the kitchen? Oh, it's this big. Oh, we have this much space to do whatever. Mm-hmm. All right, restroom. How was the restroom? Okay, the room or rooms, how is that? Does it feel cramped? Does it have air circulation? Is it big enough, right? Mm-hmm. Those are all stuff we looked at. I think one of the ones, or at least one thing I would say keep in mind is the placement and design of the apartment, right? Previously we said that you should look at floor plans, which is very important, right? There's one, the floor plan looked pretty good. But the moment we stepped inside of this apartment, right, the outside was also kind of weird, right? There wasn't that many parking spots. There was a parking lot, but I think that was for another apartment. Yeah. Right? So we had to find street parking. And the street parking was a little weird because we went at a time where people are going to work. So I don't actually know how that would have been like, right? And they didn't have assigned parking either. Yeah. So when we went into the apartment, it was a little weird because it was like a little alleyway to get up the stairs into your room.
It definitely felt very claustrophobic.
Yes, very cramped.
Yeah. Like, to get to the room, like, it's like it was like a door's distance from each other's doors, which sometimes does happen. But then like getting up there was really dark. Like everything, there was like stairs that go up that was just like really, really like shorter, and then it was very dark to even get into the apartment.
Yeah. So that was one thing. And then the other thing I looked at was why I say placement and design of the apartment is very important, because I think that one bed apartment, the living room was okay. It was connected to the kitchen. There was like a window, but I don't think there was any air circulation, right? There was only one window in the kitchen plus living room, and in the bedroom it was, I think, one small window. And it was really, really hot, and we were in there for, I think,
fall or winter.
It was basically winter.
In the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was super hot. I don't think there was AC. Right?
There wasn't.
I don't remember there being
just
AC.
Like, we noticed that was the one thing that we picked up. We noticed like the placement of like the air.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, like there's some rooms that didn't even have it.
Yeah.
So it's like, depending on what room, if you're sensitive to like heat or cold, it's like, I don't think that would have worked.
Yeah.
As well, yeah.
So I think the window was placed right where the sun is shining in, and there was no air circulation in the apartment, and it was really awkward to put a table and a bed.
That's the thing.
It was like a narrow rectangle, but it was really long. So that, to me, it was kind of weird because, okay, how would you put a table? How would you put a bed? Right? It would still feel very cramped.
Yeah.
And for us, it was also, the price was good, but it was still kind of expensive.
Yeah.
Right? For a one-bedroom apartment, compared to the other ones that we've seen, it was very weird. But in the pictures, this is why I want to emphasize too, is the pictures made it look fine.
Oh,
the pictures made it, the pictures made it look very spacious, very bright, very nice. But the design of it, in my opinion, wasn't fitting.
Yeah. I think that's why, like, the other important tip is to make sure that you are trying to imagine, like, what it would look like if you had moved all your stuff in there.
Yeah.
Because it's completely empty, and you're like, oh, like, it looks spacious. But I'm like, okay, well, imagine if you put a bed. And honestly, we have very little stuff.
Yeah, we do.
So it was... And the fact that we were like, oh, I don't think we could, like, comfortably fit in that space was a little like, oh well. And also I think it's like another thing we were saying was like, you were a pretty tall like big person, and it was like everything felt tiny, like even I felt like I was being like, it didn't feel it felt really cramped. So if that's something that you think is important, it's good to like really like check and see if that like works for you.
And then so after you check the design of the place, I think the most important stuff too after that is damages, right? Does everything look up to date? Does everything look remodeled or clean, right? Because you don't want to move into an apartment, you didn't check for everything, make sure everything was not broken, and then you get charged or like a couple $1,000s at the end because you didn't check damages, right? So check if everything's fixed, or if there's anything broken, take a picture, document it, and then when you get the lease or whatever, or you sign the lease, send them the picture and tell them like, oh, this is broken. Then they know, oh, okay, so we had to fix it. They didn't break it when they went in. And be like, I think that's the part where you have to be like pretty detailed. Like I know it's like, oh, like even if it looks new, like when they say like, oh, new carpets and new painting and like all of that, it's like very good to check like what's up, right? Because we open all the cupboards, we check like the outlets and stuff, because some of our like things are loose. I think also it's like, for me, I remember when we went, I was like, oh my god, it's so clean. So I think we like missed out on some stuff. But that's why I was like, try to be as detailed as possible when you're looking for like damages and what is actually there. Right? Because once you put your stuff into TOL, like it's harder to look at stuff because all your stuff is already there, right? But I think if you do sign it and you do see something, like let's say in the first month, quickly take a picture, document it, and send it to the landlord or the manager. Then they know, they have reference like, oh, this is what it was.
Don't be charged for damage.
So, now that you have some idea of how to find an apartment, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. I think that what's important right now, especially like when you're looking for stuff, is that just to make sure you be safe.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of like what I've really thought about was like how did the manager come meet us?
Yeah.
So it's like, did they wear masks? Were they safe? Did they keep their distance? Because I'm like, how they make sure people like are interacting is how I'm gonna be interacting within the apartment, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's like a lot of times where I knew that they enforce and we saw like 6 feet apart, don't invite a lot of people here. So just make sure that happens.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think that's the extra step right now for like searching for things in a pandemic.
Yeah,
it's like you have
definitely.
to think of an added thing for safety.
Yes.
Right? Safety in terms of like not coming near people and making sure, like for us, it's like they also like required within to make sure you're wearing masks when you walk outside and stuff. So I think that is important thing to think about now when you're looking.
Yeah. So hopefully our tips did help. Hopefully y'all are feeling more confident if you're going to get an apartment, and good luck, right?
Yes.
You might.
This is also our first-ish time.
Yeah.
So don't worry, you'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Don't get duped.
Basically, everything will work out in the end. I just want to say that. Everything
just make sure you're
out.
detail oriented in terms of like what you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like a recap is think about location. Where do you want to live? Because living somewhere is kind of a long-term investment, basically.
Yeah, it's like a year. You have to see like what's the environment like. What is it like? So.
Yeah. And then 2 is saving, having the money and the ability to do what you want. So that means having backups to the apartment so you won't be kicked out halfway through the lease.
What's the limit to your price range?
Yeah, limit to price range. And then 3 is how to find apartments, right? There's a lot of online sources, a lot of online references that could help you find and make your search easier.
Yeah.
Right? And the 4th is, what do you do when you get into apartment? How do you get into apartment? Who do you contact? What to look for? And you go on from there. So hope y'all learned something.
Yes.
And
if you all have tips,
let us know. Right?
Because we were like first timers.
Yeah. We were trying to figure this out all on our own in a span of like a couple months. So
while we were in school too.
Yeah, we started school when this was happening. So
I just moved out of an apartment to move into an apartment.
Yeah.
At that time, I was like, oh my god.
And I started school.
What's happening?
I was moving during school.
Yeah.
And then you were on break. But you just.
No, I was starting.
Oh, you started. Oh, okay. So we both started school.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
What a fun time.
What a fun time. So thank you for watching. Hopefully we helped give some tips. So